Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Comblouzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Visionary Metals, which is a mineral exploration company focused on the discovery and development of metals relevant to electrification in Wyoming. The state has a strong mining history, favorable geology, and is supportive of the resource industry. The company controls a land package of over 80 square kilometers with numerous road accessible and drill-ready targets. Today, I have with me on the webinar Wes Adams, who's the Chief Executive Officer and Director at Visionary Metals. Good to have you with us, Wes.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
So the format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Wes will provide an update on Visionary Metals and discuss its focus on nickel targets in Wyoming. And then in the second part, we'll take your questions live in a Q&A session. So please submit your questions using the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. I'll note that you can submit them at any point through the presentation. So to start, I'll get through the disclosures and then turn it over to Wes. So for Visionary Metals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Visionary Metals corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Visionary Metals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Wes. Take it away.
Thanks, Taylor. So hi, everybody. I'm Wes Adams, CEO of Visionary. I'm here today to tell you about a grassroots nickel discovery that we've made in central Wyoming. We feel like there's potential for a new nickel exploration district in Wyoming, and we're happy to be leading the charge on that. We've talked about forward-looking disclaimers, which you can look at in your own time, but about Visionary. So we started off in 2020 exploring one of the last Archean greenstone belts that was or for precious or base metals. And what we found in conducting all that grassroots exploration was that there was tremendous potential for nickel sulfide deposits. This greenstone belt sits right along a cratonic margin. So it's the perfect environment. And we've identified a 100-kilometer long trend where we're seeing outcropping nickel-bearing ultramafic rock. And so we're in a target-rich environment. It is early stage. We're the first ones to do any nickel exploration in the state of Wyoming. Fortunately for us, we did make a discovery on our third hole ever in this part of Wyoming, where we hit 44 meters of 0.23 nickel and 17 meters of 0.42 nickel in our core hole. Since then, we've drilled about 15 RC holes into the structure, and we've hit widespread mineralization in 12 out of the 14 holes we drilled this year. And then, of course, in the discovery hole, which was a core hole. So we've identified a 1 kilometer by 600 meter long mineralized body. We've drilled about half of that so far, only down to about 200 meters. So typically with nickel sulfide deposits, they occur quite deep and they can be quite high grade. So this year, what we're going to be doing is conducting some ground electromagnetic surveys to see if we can find the high grade spots within this structure. And then we'll be drill testing that starting in July. One of the things that's really unique about the project is that we have all the infrastructure from historic uranium mining that took place in some of the sedimentary rock. So we have power, natural gas, and water resources identified already. The power line and gas line are about a few hundred yards from our discovery hole. So I think that's really important because we're not going to have the infrastructure challenges as a lot of the other nickel projects that are being promoted now that are quite remote. So that's a big advantage. The other thing I like about this part of Wyoming is that it's totally uninhabited, very low human impact, and we do have strong support from our ranching community and the mining in Wyoming. So nickel, we're bullish on nickel in the long term. There's been a little bit of a supply glut coming from Indonesian nickel production. In the last couple of months, we've seen the prices drop a little bit. I think that's going to be short-lived. There's a lot of hybrid vehicle manufacturing scheduled to ramp up toward the latter part of the 2020s. And so I think, our goal is to have a development-ready asset for when those prices come back up. We saw how sensitive the supply chain is with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Prices went up to $100,000 a ton. Today, they're about $15,000 a ton, but I would expect it somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a ton in the next few years. One of the things that is unique about U.S. projects that are targeting critical and strategic minerals like nickel is that we're eligible for grant financing. So we've already seen that the federal government is getting involved through the Department of Defense and Department of Energy in other nickel projects like the Tamarack project in Minnesota and exploration that Talon's conducting in Michigan. We've seen them invest in the Stibnite antimony project in Idaho. And I think as we advance here, there's a good chance that we can get some funding. So about Wyoming, we talked about it being very underexplored for precious and base metals. Geologically, it's very well endowed. Wyoming is actually the largest exporter of electricity in the entire U.S., and it's got a population of just under 500,000 people. We also mine about 40% of the coal that's produced in the U.S. every year. This provides kind of a unique opportunity for us because we're an avenue to allow Wyoming to diversify away from fossil fuels and create new jobs in the mining sector. So, while there has been a lot of past production, specifically uranium and oil and gas and coal and soda ash, there's also an opportunity to revitalize some of the historic production for electronic metals like cobalt and nickel. A lot of people don't know this about Wyoming, but it was actually the largest producer of copper in the early 1900s. So I think, certainly that shows that there's geologic potential there. And, it hasn't really been explored since World War I. So, this we think is one of the last frontiers for nickel sulfide exploration in the lower 48. So we talked about the location in central Wyoming. I'm going to get on the whiteboard here and draw a picture. But basically, why we're interested in this part of Wyoming is because it's right along this cratonic margin. And so here we're going down the Wind River Range, right? It's a big mountain range. And then across to the Granite Mountains and then down through the Laramie Range. Everything to the south is part of what they call the Southern Accreted Terrain. This was an island in Archean times, which actually crashed into the Sweetwater province of the Wyoming Craton. And so whenever you have a continental collision like that, it folds all the rock and fractures it. So we have an area here that we've identified that's over 100 kilometers long, where we're right on the boundary of a cratonic margin. And so the way that you form nickel sulfide is as you get these rocks fractured and they start to sink back into the Earth's mantle, it forces magma up, and that magma fills fractures in the rock. And the other thing we look at is, we have nickel in the system because of these magmatic intrusives, but we need a source of sulfur as well. Fortunately for us, there was a large layer of iron formation that has a ton of sulfide in it. And so what happens when these intrusives come in is that they actually melt that iron formation and they form a nickel sulfide. And typically in these, you'll see disseminated mineralization near surface and a high-grade mineralization at the base of the intrusion, which we haven't drilled yet. We've just drilled through the disseminated portion. So we fully expect to be able to hit some high grade on the targets that we've identified. And to give you an idea of scale, from one side of the other on this map, you'll see the little stars. King Solomon, where we made our initial discovery, is the black one. All the red ones are targets that we identified in this year's drill program. And so those are nickel-bearing ultramafics. Many of them are in contact with the iron formation, so we should have nickel sulfide in them. And it covers an entire area of about 100 kilometers from one side to the other. So we think that there is district scale potential here, and our goal this year is to really test that. Right, we'll do our resource drilling, drilling toward a resource at King Solomon, but then we'll also be stepping out and testing some additional targets. One of the things that we do prior to exploring an area is to kind of check all the boxes of the things that we look for. So we're right along the protonic margin. We do have the nickel and the olivine bearing magmas, and we have a source of sulfur. A lot of these deposits are very similar to what you find in the Superior Province in Canada and in Western Australia, in that they occur around 2.7 billion years old, which is, we had a lot of tectonic activity. And so that's, meets all the criteria that you find at some of the other major Archean nickel districts. We zoom in here onto our target area at King Solomon. This is just one of about a dozen structures that we've identified across that 100-kilometer corridor, but it's where we made our first discovery. This year, we completed just over 3,000 meters of RC drilling. As I mentioned earlier, we hit on 12 of 14 of those holes, disseminated mineralization. I think that when we drill this with core holes, we'll see a little bit higher grade. Reverse circulation drilling is really just an indicative tool, and it is prone to contamination. So some of the results that we got this year, I think, will be confirmed to be higher grade when we drill it with core. That being said, we did get some high grade hits in the RC program. We had 1.5 meters of 0.7% nickel, which demonstrates that there could be higher grade in this system. And we also got several long intercepts, 100 meters at close to 0.2%. So the important thing about this is that the nickel we are seeing is pentlandite, which is a nickel sulfide. It's exactly what you look for in magmatic nickel systems. And so it gives us some great confidence that we're going to be able to find higher grade in this system. This is a cross-section of the King Solomon intrusive. We've tested it down to about 200 meters. We believe that it goes down to about at least 400 or 500 meters deep, and probably beyond that, because it comes from the core of the earth. What we've seen are broad zones of mineralization in the RC holes. The intrusion is actually upside down, meaning that it's been kind of tipped over on its side. So you'll see the mineralization that we're finding is at the base of the intrusion, which is actually, in this case, the top of the intrusion. So we expect to find mineralization at depth as we go down. This, is a similar characteristic that you find at the Eagle mine, which is being mined out by Lundin now. They've got about 6 years left. But what they have there at Eagle is low-grade disseminated mineralization near surface, and then they've got massive sulfide at surface. And I think it's 10 million tons of over 2%. So that's the type of target that we're looking for here. and we hope to prove that we've got massive sulfide in this system in 2024. I won't bore you too much with petrography, but for the geologists that are listening in, what we've confirmed is that we do have a classical nickel sulfide assemblage here, right? So we show pentlandite, violarite, and magnetite. And so violarite is like a supergene form of nickel sulfide that you find near surface. Pentlandite is a major component of a lot of economic nickel deposits. It's nickel sulfide. And then magnetite, which is possibly a byproduct. It is at some of the low-grade deposits that are being developed in Canada right now. So we talked a little bit about the sulfides that we're seeing. We also see, evidence of gaussons at surface. So this is what massive sulfide deposits look like at surface. This one is actually pyrite, so it's iron sulfide. It's not worth anything. But we do find copper associated with a structure. This is about 15 kilometers away from King Solomon discovery, just to give you an idea of the scale of our projects. Geophysically, it looks a lot like King Solomon. We've got a cross-section here showing the chargeability and low resistivity zones. Typically, what you look for is chargeable metal at depth. What's interesting is that we've traced this nickel chromium structure for about 4.5 kilometers. So this is all ultramafic. The little black dots are where the structure outcrops. And we've been able to use soil sampling and soil geochemistry to map out where the structure goes. It's also we've done some magnetic surveying on this structure, and it is match. So this is definitely a target that we're going to be drilling in 2024, and then we'll also be doing some follow-up work at Black Rock. We drilled one core hole into Black Rock in 2022. We had 33 meters of 0.15% nickel, but no sulfides. Unusually, we found some gold and copper mineralization that's right at surface on this structure, and also some nickel and cobalt grades. So we're going to follow up with electromagnetic surveying at Black Rock. We'll do that at King Solomon and Tin Cup 2. Which electromagnetic surveying will allow us to detect massive sulfides undercover. So I think that'll be a really useful tool for helping us, helping guide us to the higher grade zones of these deposits. And then we're also looking to do some airborne geophysical surveys regionally to cover the whole cratonic margin. So far, we've made a ton of progress. We financed a lot of the early stage exploration, the higher risk exploration internally. I'm the biggest shareholder of the company at about 18.5%. Our top 10 shareholders control about 80% of the company now, I believe. And we've had an extremely high success rate with the drilling that we've done to date. We've hit on 16 of 19 RC and diamond drill holes that we're targeting nickel. And we've consolidated a land package that's 55 square kilometers. It's basically what we've done is staked all the low-hanging fruit along a 100-kilometer long trend. And we'll go out and probably be staking more in 2024. We talked about the infrastructure earlier. Another thing that's important is accessibility, right? This is an area with no trees, great road infrastructure, and all of these targets are within an hour from our headquarters in Lander, Wyoming. So that's another big advantage that we have. Talked a little bit about the cap structure. As you can see, it's we do have 150 million shares outstanding, but the lion's share of it is all held, between about 10 mining investors. All of us are long-term investors. We're in this to make a big success. in the long term, and not looking to move from project to project here. We really feel like we've got the potential to capitalize on a district scale opportunity in Wyoming, and everybody's happy to stay invested and continue to support the company going forward. So in 2024, we'll be working on our creating some near-term value. First, we'll start with the geophysics, trying to identify the high-grade spots within this system, and then we'll be drilling at King Solomon this summer and at our regional targets as well. So we feel like there's a great opportunity to be able to open up the district scale potential this summer. The airborne survey and the ground surveys should shed a lot of light on the regional potential here, and we look to make more discoveries in 2024 and 2025 as we progress here. Little bit about my background. I'm a third-generation mining executive. I started my career working on the 11 million ounce Turapara deposit in Guyana. We raised over $100 million in equity for that project. It's now held by Eris Gold. In 2014, I moved back to Wyoming and had an oil and gas services company that I started. Sold it in 2017 and decided that I wanted to get back to what I'm best at, which is mineral exploration. And so founded Visionary and got started on this project in 2020. And it took us a couple years to figure out what the target commodity was here. When you look at greenstone belts, you think about gold, you think about pegmatite deposits. And so we looked at all that stuff, but what we determined was that the best potential was for nickel sulfide. And so now we've proven that, and I think it's got a big upside to it. Recently, we just brought on a new chief geologist, Michael Page. Mike is one of the top nickel geologists, I would say, in the world. He's worked with companies like Ivanhoe. He was the director of exploration for Norilsk Nickel, which is the largest nickel and palladium producer in the world. And it's also worked for BHP and Goldfield. So it's great to have a geologist of Mike's caliber, to be able to assess these projects. And, he wouldn't have come on if he didn't believe that there was big potential here in Wyoming. We try to surround Mike and the rest of our younger geologists with experienced geologists. And, Mike certainly has the experience. He actually worked with a couple of our advisory board geologists, Gene Spearing, who is VPX at Quaterra. Mike and Gene were part of discoveries with Rio Narcia gold mines, and eventually Agua Blanca, which was a nickel project, which was, I think both of them were sold to Lundin Mining. So these guys have a ton of experience. When we're out exploring, they help us out with interpretation. Another notable person here is Ken Sweet, and then Sammy Buezo, who led all the work that we conducted that led us to the King Solomon discovery. And so we've got a great technical team, in-house geophysicist, and then of course Stan Dempsey, who's a close personal advisor to me. He's a National Hall of Fame member and former chairman of Royal Gold. And he's actually brought a couple of his early investors in Royal Gold with him. So can't thank Stan enough for what he's done for our company. At the board level, we've got a good mix of capital markets people, geologists, and also David Miller, who's our most recent addition. David was Speaker of the House for the state legislature in Wyoming for about 20 years, but he's also a mining executive. He started Strathmore, which developed the CK Gold Project in eastern Wyoming, which is now being permitted for production, and also sold his company to Energy Fuels for Honda uranium assets. So plenty of experience here. And I guess with that, we can open it up to questions. and comments.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Wes. Great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat at any point. With that said, we do have some that have already been submitted. So I'll just go in order here. So first one, will Visionary be attending the PDAC show in Toronto in March? Maybe just give kind of the rundown on upcoming marketing and presentations.
Yeah, so we're actually going to be attending the pre-PDAC conference that Red Cloud is putting on. So I'll be speaking first, I believe, at 4:30, and then I'll be taking meetings all day on March 1st as well. And I will attend the first 2 days of the PDAC. We're not going to have a booth at the PDAC, but I will be there taking meetings.
Perfect. Okay. Next question here. Somebody just wondering if you have any platinum and palladium that you've identified at any targets.
We see like byproduct credit grades. So there's in our core hole we had elevated gold, platinum, and palladium within the nickel intercept. Typically, these type of systems, these intrusion related systems, don't have a whole lot of PGEs in them. You'll get byproducts of hopefully platinum, palladium, gold, and cobalt. But the real value is in the nickel and potentially in the copper. We've seen some elevated copper in this year's drill program, and I think we'd like to, if you typically when you get deeper in the systems, you can find copper with the nickel. So that's what we're hoping to hit in 2024. So currently, with regard to the burn rate, I see that's the other question. We have about $250,000 in the bank right now. We'll probably be doing a financing in the near term. We do have some interesting opportunities that are coming up for grant financing, and we've actually been selected as a finalist for some grant money. So I'm hoping to get make some progress on securing some of those grants, and also we've got a very strong group of shareholders that continue to participate, myself included, in our financing. So I don't really see financing as big of a risk as it is for some other companies.
Perfect. Okay. So then, I think as well, and another question that I have that, maybe just to pick up on a few points that you raised in the presentation, just to clarify and kind of talk a bit more about, just wondering about, I guess, both on two levels, both the deposit, on the deposit scale, as well as kind of the regional scale. Just wondering about, using scale a lot in this question, but the scale potential, both of the deposit and of the regional potential. Just you mentioned briefly how these aren't the same as what you would find in Timmins, such as a Canada nickel style Crawford deposit, likely more related to a higher grade component that would be more amenable to underground mining. So maybe just chat a bit about that.
Yeah, so a lot of the projects in Canada, and I'm not as familiar with them as I am with our own project, but a lot of the nickel sulfide and the nickel iron alloy that exists there is actually a product of serpentinization.
Yeah.
So there is potential for that in Wyoming. We haven't seen any of it yet, but we do see magmatic sulfide textures, right? And that's what Mike keeps telling me, is that, look, if you have magmatic sulfides in your system, you've got all the ingredients. The target really should be these deeper, massive sulfide type deposits. So, I've seen recently, you've got premium nickel. They're hitting a lot of great mineralization. You've got Power Nickel, which is developing its project. So and these things have similar characteristics, right? You typically see the disseminated mineralization near surface, and then you see massive sulfide at depth. So, there's always a question of, well, how deep is it going to be? And we really don't know that until we're able to run the EM and do some deeper drilling on this. And that's the plan for 2024.
Right. So essentially that'll help you identify the structure and the potential traps for that type of mineralization.
Yeah. I mean, what's encouraging about the drilling we've done so far is that we've seen these broad zones of disseminated mineralization. We've seen some elevated grades. The 0.7 intercept that we had over 1.5 meters was pretty near surface, right? And the core hole intercept that we had 17 meters at 0.42. I mean, that's approaching, potentially economic grades, right? And so our goal this year is to twin some of the RC holes. We did one twin of our core hole with RC this year, and what we found was that we had lower grades over longer widths, right? So our nickel sulfides, being spread out due to sample contamination with the RC drilling. And that's just, one of the pitfalls of RC drilling. The reason that we did it is because, core drilling is expensive, right? And so, for less than $1 million, we were able to drill, 14 holes. And now we know where we can drill into the mineralization. And my feeling is that there's going to be higher grade over narrow widths consistently. And a lot of that mineralization is near surface. So there could be a, possible open pit component at King Solomon, but we've got to further define that this year.
Right. Okay. And then on the regional scale, the reason I kind of ask about that is the thing in the news today is Canada Nickel's announcement of that building a processing facility as kind of a hub for all those low grade, large scale deposits up near Timmins. Is this kind of the same, like we just talked about differences in the deposits, but is there that regional potential to have more of these and to kind of bring in a larger push for this kind of, as you were saying?
Absolutely. I mean, if there's one thing that's true about nickel sulfide deposits is that they usually don't occur just as a standalone, right? It's usually across a belt. And so this is no different. The difference, I guess, between this and the Superior Province is that this one hasn't been explored by hundreds of junior mining companies. So it is a big opportunity. We've already identified, we've seen nickel sulfide at surface about 30 kilometers away from King Solomon. So we staked some claims there. That's a great indication of the regional potential. And then we've seen these ultramafic intrusives that look similar to King Solomon, across this whole 100-kilometer corridor that we're looking at. And so we've claimed several of those areas already. It's all on BLM and state land. The state is very supportive. We had, our Congress representatives from our Congresswoman, both U.S. senators on site in November, all of our state and local reps. And what came out of that was that there is, a ton of opportunity to get project financing, right? And so, we're big fans of what Canada Nickel is doing. I think they're an excellent company, and we hope to, eventually have enough resources to build that type of infrastructure in Wyoming. The fortunate thing about being located in the U.S. is that there is federal financing available for critical minerals projects, and it's not small amounts of money either. It can be, up to $20 million just for exploration, and then bonds for development financing as well. So it's a big incentive for us to continue to work. Because we know we've got support not only from the state and the people of Wyoming who appreciate mining, but also, possibly from the federal government as well.
Perfect. Okay. So I don't see any other questions that have come in. So maybe I'll just put out a final call to our audience to submit any final questions before we wrap up here. But maybe just, give us the final pitch or the main takeaway you want to leave with investors, and then we'll see if any questions come in.
Yeah. Well, I guess, we'd love if you would support us. We put a lot of time and effort into this. And we think there's district scale upside in Wyoming for new nickel sulfide discoveries. We've made the first one in Wyoming history. It's the first one in North America in the lower 48 in a very long time. And so that's where money is made in the exploration business. It's not developing projects that have failed in previous commodity cycles. It's making new discoveries and bringing new resources to market, and that's what our intention is at Visionary. And personally, I've invested over $2 million in this company, and I don't take a salary, so my money is where my mouth is on this one.
Excellent. All right. So I don't see any questions that have come in, so I think we'll leave it there. But I'll just reiterate again that Wes will be presenting at our pre-PDAC conference in Toronto at the end of the month, right before the PDAC conference. And contact your Red Cloud representative for more information or to register if you have not already. I would like to thank Wes from Visionary Metals today for taking the time to host the webinar with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.